This is Keen on Yoga, and I'm here today with Paul Grilley of the Yin Yoga fame. Hi, Paul.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Great. It's summer here, and I live in a small mountain town, not South Park, but similar. And summers in the mountains just can't get better.
No, you seem in good spirits. Well,
Yeah.
I can't introduce you more, really. I mean, Paul has well known, I think, to more or less everyone now for your. I think it's contentious to say Yin Yoga. It was invented by Paul Grilley. I don't think we could say that, but we can certainly say that you have definitely been a strong exponent of this Yin Yoga method, and for many years, and many Ashtanga people have dabbled in the Yin. I think we had Sarah Powers on talking about how she would teach the Yin Yoga to Ashtanga students to start her career. So, yeah, I think to start off, Paula, we've talked a little bit off camera. Would you mind just kind of giving a little update of how, when you started yoga, because it was a long time ago, I believe, and
How far back do you want me to go? You want me to go to like my personal dramatic history or just Yin?
Oh, yes. Your dramatic history sounds very, very exciting. Please do.
Okay. I was about 20, and I was sort of the common story. I'd gone to college, but nothing really blew my skirt up, and I pulled out after 2 years, so I was about 20 years old, and I was working with my dad, who was a carpenter, and I remember that first summer when I thought, I'm not going back to school. I don't know what I'm going to do. We were working about 150 miles from home, 8-10-hour days, 100-degree heat. I thought, but it's not going to be this. This working for a living thing. This is not for me. And at that time, I read the autobiography of a yogi, and I was, that book changed my life in every way. Some people have, they read the Bible, they have a come to Jesus moment, and I don't mean that disparagingly. And for me, the autobiography of a yogi opened up. I had no idea that there was a spiritual world or spiritual disciplines or any of that. It's kind of like, my shallow exposure to spirituality was, nothing. And so I was just sort of like, I just discovered America. It's like no one told me there was a continent there. And so I think like most people, I read a book in the summer. It's completely altering me. I started to study that. They have lessons. The institution that Yogananda founded, they have lessons they sent out, and I was reading them. And then I wanted anything Indian, anything yoga. Well, in Montana in 1978, anything yoga was 3 books on the bookshelf. There was this big silver book. And I took that off the shelf and looked at it and saw this Indian guy bent in all kinds of weird ways and going like, that is not happening. And I put that down. And there was 2 other little yoga books, much more suited to me, simple forward bends and backward bends and philosophy, little pranayama. And I started studying yoga on my own. And then about 6 months later, I was taking anatomy courses because I thought, okay, I love this yoga stuff. But no one taught yoga for a living or anything. So you're not going to earn a living teaching yoga. That's not a thing. And I thought, well, maybe I could become like a chiropractor, really get, skilled with my hands, understand the anatomy, and then maybe interest people or at least keep my own professional development going on the side. So I'll do a chiropractor thing. First step in that is, I had basic sciences in college, but the first step I needed to fill in was biology and anatomy. Went to a local community college. While I'm there, I met an older woman, older meaning she was, 30, 35. I don't know. I don't know if you have that same structure in the UK about, you have colleges and the community colleges, and community colleges is a whole range of mix of people with different motivations.
Yeah.
And she says, oh, I heard you're into yoga. And I'm like, don't say that out loud. People are going to think I'm weird. And they go, well, I have this book at home. You might really like it. I go, sure. I've only seen 3 yoga books. Bring it in. She brought in Bikram Chowdhury's Hot Yoga book. And it wasn't called Hot Yoga then. But you flip that book open, at least that edition of it, in 1978. flip it open, the inside title page has a picture of Paramahansa Yogananda, who had completely changed my world, and his younger brother, Vishnu Ghosh,
It was
who
Bikram
was
Ghosh.
Bikram's teachers.
Yeah.
And so, the typical, I didn't say this out loud, but the typical, aggrandizing of your own life experience. Oh, message from God. This is definitely, the yoga I should be doing. And so I studied, I stopped doing the other yoga books, the simple yoga practices I've been doing for 6 months, let's say. And I just did Bikram's thing. And I went to LA, and I studied there for a while at Bikram's college, taught there for a while, for about a year and a half, 2 years. We're now into like 1982 or 83. And we had a huge fight, he and I. I taught a little bit.
You and Bikram?
Oh, yeah. I was teaching at his school. He had one school then, and we had a fight, and
about
I said,
what?
Well, I don't want to get into it and drag other people's names into it, but he was like trying to tell me like what to do and who to talk to and stuff outside of class.
Okay. Right.
I'm like, I'm 23, 24 years old. Says, who do you think you are? And so we were like, okay. And so now I'm like, okay, I've been doing Bikram, and I had been doing what he called at that time the advanced class, which is really just a sort of a self-study that about a dozen people would do at noon 3 times a week. And literally it was just a list of paper with poses, and you just went through it. And so I got exposed to far more yoga than the 26, 24.
Yeah, something like that. They're not many anyway. Yeah, right. Yeah.
I was exposed from my previous studies and from these advanced 84 postures that I knew there was a bigger palette of stuff out there to do. And so I studied on my own. I took Iyengar's book, the Light on Yoga book, the book that I had picked up when I had first started
that was the silver
an interest
book.
in yoga, the silver book.
Yeah.
I didn't know I had to explain. I thought everyone knew the silver book.
Oh, so no, that was white when I got to it. Yeah.
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
Silver.
Yeah, right, silver. Okay. Right.
And he had a program in the back of his book that I think goes for 5 years. Weeks 1 through 4 do this. Weeks 4 through 12 do this. Weeks 12 through 24 do this. And so if you go to his book, you see in the back of the book, there's a 5-year development program. And so I sat down with that book, and I wrote down, because I didn't know the Sanskrit names at the time, and I familiarized myself with the names, and I took apart what is his program. And when I looked at it, by this time I'd already been taking kinesiology and stuff at college, as I told you. So I had the basic understandings of anatomy and musculature and all that kind of stuff. But I could see the development was very logical.
Was it?
You start with a little bit of external rotation, and then more external rotation. See, I knew that language. It isn't like this pose, this pose. It was like, this pose requires external rotation. This pose requires more external rotation.
Unique at the time, I'd say.
Yeah. So that start of I'd taken kinesiology courses, which is the study of movement, not just name this muscle, but how do you move? And that informed everything that I did. It was just natural to me. So I took that book apart and saw, there's a logical development. You don't have to necessarily do a 26 poses forever. It's like, no, you do this for a while, and then you progress, and then you progress. Now, for an Ashtangi, that's probably like, well, of course, there's 1, 2, 3. I don't know how many Ashtangi levels there are now. But, used to be is 4.
Yeah, they changed.
Yeah, of course, because this is the right way. But it was, so I took that apart and I started teaching, it's like, okay, well, here's what I've been teaching. This is an external rotation pose. But now I've seen that here's a pose. Really what it is more external rotation. So I started to expand what I was doing. And I did that for a couple of years. It's a little blurry now, maybe 2 years, 2.5 years. And then David Williams, the famous Ashtangi David Williams, he lived in a little tiny place in Hawaii, still does. Well, he's moved a little bit. He lived in this little tiny place in Hawaii where if you lost your place in Hawaii, there was nowhere to go. They're not building huts on that side of the island. And so he had to move out of his place because the next place he was going to move into was, not available for like 8 weeks. So he came to LA, and I can't remember who it was to put the bug in my ear, but says, you should study with, this guy, David Williams. So me and Steve Ross and Sean French and a bunch of other people I don't even know anymore took advantage of David's coming, and he taught for 6 weeks. The Ashtanga. And David, being the open-handed liberal guy that he is, it was like, I will teach you as many poses as you can do and memorize. Well, memorization is my thing. I can memorize a list of 100 objects in a day. That's not a problem. So it's like, okay. So in 6 weeks, myself and some of these other guys you probably don't know, we got like through third series. And by that time, 6 weeks is up. And it was like, look, we'd all been doing yoga for 8-10 years. It was just a question of, you just need me to memorize the sequence and jump back and jump through. We can do all of that. And so then this is probably I think that was 86, something like that.
He's teaching just you guys on your own, like privately?
No, well, small groups of people whoever had heard about it. No internet. Hello, everyone out there. No internet. How do you get the word out? I don't know how they did it. That's actually where I met Madi. She wasn't the owner, but she was the manager of that White Lotus studio.
Oh, so it was Ganga's place he toured at.
Ganga's place.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so am I going too slow with this narrative?
Not at all. No, I love it. I mean, just nice filling in these blanks of the old history. I know people love it as well. I mean, the old Ashtanga history. Okay. We love this. Yeah.
So then so David, he himself is very liberal minded about it. He himself had already fallen away from doing anything with the institution, the organization, because of stuff that had happened to him. And he was always grateful. He said that he every year wrote a letter to Katabi thanking him for teaching him, but he had nothing to do with the organization. There wasn't much of an organization then, but he didn't have anything to do with it. He was grateful. He was respectful, but he didn't think, he just, if you went to Hawaii to study with him, he'd teach you as much as he could. He wasn't trying to be your guru. He says, I'm an asana instructor. The yoga will transform you in whatever way it's going to transform you. You don't need my blessing or anything else. And so those of us who trained with him and already had that sort of California, don't tell me what to do predisposition, we took that and go like, no one's going to do this. No one's going to do pure Ashtanga yoga. They don't know what it is. And so we did what Brian Kess did and Johnny Kess did and everyone else did. It's like, well, let's edit out certain things that are too difficult for 90% of the population, but let's keep the vinyasa, maybe jump through, maybe just move through. Let's keep that element to it, and we'll call it power yoga, whatever. Ultimate flow, ultimate power, power this, flow this. And everybody started doing that now. And so you went away from the yoga of the ashram, the yoga that was just do a pose, relax your back. And now, today we're going to do this. And now we went from most people adapted this. It's hot, it's powerful, it's sexy. This is LA. That's what you're going to do. And it became explosively popular. Not pure Ashtanga, power yoga. That became popular, and everyone's class was different based on their personality, like mine, and I'm adapting it to who's in front of me. It was Chuck and Madi who, after 5 or 6 years of that, people were like, okay, what is the Ashtanga? Now the internet is almost on us, and they go, we want to do an Ashtanga, a pure Ashtanga. We want to have Ashtanga happening, not these adaptations. We want Ashtanga. And, and God bless them, that's what they did. And because it's a city of 12 million people fascinated with their bodies, it took off. And
you make a good point, which you've made elsewhere, that on other podcasts, that it seems obvious now, the secularization of something which wasn't really done in a secular context, but it was a big step, and the way that suddenly at a similar point, people traditional modes of let's say moving together, say like traditional dance movement, and like dancing around the maypole in England, like folk dance and all this. And suddenly, right, in the 70s, and 80s, 90s, there's this different thing happening, and it's taking yoga and making it, I suppose westernizing it, right? And I think you reasonably lay out the groundwork of how those steps go.
I think that if there hadn't been an explosion in the 70s of aerobics and dance classes, the adaptation and secularization of Ashtanga wouldn't have happened, or it would have been very slow and sort of reserved to the side. But, the idea that dance aerobics, that people would do exercise classes, it went from, well, I'm not a dancer, but I want to stay in shape, and I'm going to do ballet. And you're a guy, you play tennis or go to the gym. But it came, I believe, from that in what first hit in LA, like every exercise trend hit in LA, was this sweat your buns off for 75 minutes. You call it dance aerobics, call it jazz aerobics, call it whatever you want. That was the innovation. No one's dancing around the maypole, and no one's doing, calisthenic exercises like in the military. That was the innovation. That was all over LA. I don't think it was all over the US yet, but it was all over LA. And so you had someone coming in and says, well, I have a power yoga that's going to appeal to these people who are maybe burned out, injured, or tired of, crunches and whatever. Here's this beautiful flowing thing that when you're done, you're as high as you can be legally. You're like, wow, just from physical practice, this is fantastic. And so because people were now socially accustomed, you were actually starting to, this is not a small thing. You actually started having people making clothes that was suited for that practice because women drove this thing. When I looked out over my classes, in the 80s and early 90s, it was 85% women because men didn't go to aerobics. It was like they fell out of place and clumsy and awkward, and they were. But when the yoga thing hit, you didn't have to be, an ex-ballerina jazz dancer. You could just be a dude and stand there and just, choose your power and do extra chaturangas. And so to me, the ground was laid. The secularization of yoga happened not because someone went to the ashram and said, I just want to pull this out. It was the other way around. People were in LA. People are exercising, healthy, all in a good way. And people from over here who had studied Ashtanga said, I can infiltrate this into a class here. I can find a pre-made market for people who are just tired of bouncing up and down and do yoga. And now I have a power flow aerobic yoga practice. That was the revolution.
And yoga, it is, and I think, it's hard for people to know now, really, that that it was such a big thing, right? I think, again, from elsewhere, my research on you mentioned that the yoga that you started with was kind of like a let's say a hatha yoga, a gentle yoga, and you kind of say
I call it ashram yoga.
Yeah, ashram yoga. You kind of went back to that. Right, the Yin Yoga was essentially, in a way, the old-fashioned Hatha Yoga that you learnt and I learnt, and it was often, not to stereotype, but often the domain of what I would call an older lady, now my age, like a 40, 50, 60-year-old lady, and they would teach you sedentary, slow yoga postures, and you would hold them for a period of time, and then I started that way, and then sound like you did. And then, obviously, you got into the Ashtanga. How did you come back out of it into the Yin then? Because I also heard you saying you were practicing, 6 hours of yoga a day or something, and then you kind of had it. Well, did you say that?
Yes, that's
sure.
true.
You said that. Did you say you were practicing all day, and then you kind of had the revelation that there's things that you would never be able to do with practice, right? that your body would not do that, and that was was that a kind of turning point?
No, that's a conflation of two different stages. Right. Okay. It's that one, no one can sustain that. No one can sustain 6 hours a day. That was for a period of time. It's a great hagiography, and it makes me look good. But that probably lasted I built up to that. That probably lasted for 6-8 months. I actually hurt my knee pretty severely and reluctantly had to cut back from that.
Cut back from 6 hours to
from 6 hours a day.
4.
Maybe.
How do you cut back from 6 hours?
anything
in a
less
balanced
than
kind of way.
6.
Yeah.
And so then by that time I'd split from Bikram, and I was doing the teaching on my own. So I was free to pick and choose what I practiced, when I practiced. And so I was experimenting with all these things, but it wasn't power yoga vinyasa, well, that's not true. They kind of overlapped, but yeah, I cut back from that, but I still had the belief that, with enough practice, I could do all the poses. I had that belief until 1998. I can almost put a date to it. So I went from 1978 to yoga from books, ashram yoga, Bikram, pseudo Iyengar improvised yoga, David Williams power yoga. That was my first 10 years of yoga. And I was still convinced, by doing it, that even though the 6 hours a day thing didn't last very long, but that's how intensely we practice. In fact, when my wife and I got together, it's how I date things. When we got together, we would meet with a friend of ours, Steve Ross, and others. We do things like 100 wheels a day. So
100 Daniel.
Yeah, and I did nerve damage to my arm and my neck, everything else.
But weren't you surprised though when you went through the Yengar's like 4-year or 5-year program that after the 5 years you couldn't do everything? Wasn't that a bit of a sign? Something?
Yeah. All of it was sort of a sign, but you can always tell yourself, I'm just not holding the Mula Bandha. So you can edit out this, whatever, my own biography that you want to. But we finally come up to what's relevant. And what's relevant is I've been doing hardcore yoga for 10 years, 88. And that's when I saw Paulie Zink do an interview in a local TV show. And just sort of sitting there, I don't know if you've ever seen a video of him, but he's a very mild-mannered, small man, and just talking and answering these questions. And it was all martial arts. And he kept not deflecting, but saying, yes, that's a lot of practice, but you really need to do yoga, to keep your body fit to do those things that I do. Because he was like 2-time world champion of forms.
Yeah, it's crazy. That monkey kung fu.
Yeah, and then he demonstrated some yoga, and I go, wow, he is very flexible. And then he said, this is my foundation for my martial art. And there was enough of a description of how he'd hold poses for a long time that I thought after 10 years of literally almost killing myself, maybe why I can't do everything in the back of Iyengar's book, he said it only takes 5 years. I'm doing it 10 years, and I'm in my 20s. I'm not an old man coming to it. And I go, I'm 10 years into it. And it's like, there are things I'm not even close to doing. And I thought, but when you look at it, everything is sort of just variations of the same brand of food. It's all yogurt. Little of this, change the choreography, do jump backs, don't do jump backs, whatever. It's all hot, sweaty, move and flow. Here's a guy saying, get into a pose, stay there 5 or 10 minutes. I thought, maybe this is it. So I'm still of the notion of, well, if I just do the right thing, I will do all the poses. And so I studied with Paulie for about a year because once a week he had a class in his garage, and he was an hour drive away from me on the freeway. And so, after about a year of that, I'm going I just can't do this anymore. But really it was because Paulie, again, was like David Williams. He was very generous. He didn't have this guru thing. He didn't have, maybe I'll teach you if you clean my clothes for a year. He would teach you as much as you wanted, which is one of the things where I really admire about him.
I think he used to teach for hours a day, didn't he? I mean, he used to start off at 8 o'clock and go on to like midnight or something, right?
Yeah, at night. He in his own world did 4 to 6 hours a night, every night. He'd start at about 10 o'clock at night, and he would go till like 3 or 4 in the morning. I mean, the guy has got incredible drive and discipline. And for someone who was that focused and that dedicated, to be as generous and as open is highly unusual. It's always, I went through hell to get this, I'm going to make you go through hell. The hazing ritual of school and medical school and the Marines and whatever it is. I went through hell. I'm going to make your life hell. Why? I don't know. And whenever I meet a David Williams or a Paulie Zink who was like, well, I went through hell, you don't have to. And they just, treat you like a decent human being and say, here you go. I'll be forever grateful for that. Because he could have played his cards in a different way. Maybe I'd have studied with him. Maybe I'm not, because I'm kind of allergic to that. But the fact is he didn't. He gave as much as people could absorb. As far as yoga, I didn't get anywhere in his martial art. But as far as yoga, he was like, and by 6-8 months, there's nothing more to learn. It's like, how long does it take to learn yin yoga? I don't know, a day? There's no new pose in yin yoga. So if you've got 10 years, 15 years of experience behind you, when I met Paul, it was 10 years, then you go like, okay, it's the splits, but just relax your muscles and stay there 5 minutes. It's like, there was no theory. And so by the end of, 8, 9 months, a year, I don't remember now, I go like, okay, this is it. I've learned. I've asked him. He's as generous as he can be. He's not saying, well, maybe I'll tell you next year. He was completely giving. And I go like, okay, this is it. There's no secret. Just do it. Just do it. And so that was that in 1988 forward was, okay, I'm going to do yin.
And he was calling it yin, was he? Paulie was saying it was yin.
I don't know if Paulie was calling it yin, but it was obviously... his whole thing is yin and yang, Taoist yoga. He probably said things over and over like, well, this is the yin aspect of my training. Right. And my beautiful flowing art forms are the yang aspect of my training. He called it all Taoist yoga. I don't know where he got the word, maybe from his teacher, I don't know. But he called it, look, I teach Taoist yoga. And obviously, the slow things on the floor is the yin aspect of Taoist yoga, but it's not complete if you're not doing forms and strength and balance and coordination, but the yang aspects of yoga. In fact, when I wrote a manual so that people could have something to refer to, because Paulie didn't have a manual or anything for it, I called it Taoist yoga. I changed the name when I actually stopped self-publishing a spiral-bound notebook for my students to use. And they go like, oh, this, mom and pop publishing house wants to publish my book. That'll be great because it'll look more professional. My thing was just like spiral bound little thing. And so we said, Taoist yoga really isn't the appropriate name because it's not.
It's a bit confusing, isn't it? Oh, yoga, Taoism, what is it? Yeah.
And so we picked a name that no one was using because it wasn't Hatha yoga, as you said, Adam. Hatha yoga was for 45-year-old women who no longer wanted to work out and jump around. I called it ashram yoga. It wasn't ashram yoga. It wasn't the Hatha yoga of that time, our time where it was like soft and easy. So it wasn't that, but it wasn't power yoga. You got to give it a name. And my publisher says, you got to give it a name. And I'm going like, yeah, you're right. And, I go like, well, this is going to get a broad circulation of people who may never meet me or study with me. Let's be more accurate. And Sarah Powers had already been calling it, I want to introduce you to yin yoga now. And so I was getting emails occasionally from people that Sarah had taught saying, oh, Sarah Powers is here. And she introduced us to a form of yoga called yin yoga. And she recommended you. And I said, yeah, that's me. I'm the yin yoga guy. So that was an easy thing of Sarah promoting me as the yin yoga guy. Well, if you're going to write a book and you're the yin yoga guy, let's call it yin yoga.
It's funny because obviously there is this politics, I think, around yin as there is around anything else like Ashtanga now, right? And but yeah, it seems very clear when you explain it like that there was just this sort of free-flowing idea that, well, postures to stay in a posture longer again seemed a perfect kind of backlash in a way to try and to kind of like this really fast and rapid way of moving, so that going back again to the yin and yang is just kind of a perfect complement to well, that's not working quite, or maybe we could do both as well, right? We could do the yin and the yang, as Sarah I think did, like say, well, on the moon days teach the Ashtanga people the yin yoga, right?
There you go.
But past that, I have to be fair, I never really got past that. But then listening to the other podcasts you've done, you say a lot of interesting things about the fascia and the meridians. And so that's one thing, the fascia and the meridians, because people are obsessed with fascia these days. So I wonder if you could talk about the anatomy of a stretch. Yeah, you wouldn't know it, would you? I think you went to a whole fascia conference and talked to someone at a fascia conference. So apparently there is one. I think I saw a YouTube with you talking in this conference to a.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I got to get on YouTube more.
I know, you're going to see yourself. You see yourself everywhere. You're popping up everywhere. So you talk one about fascia meridians. I thought that was really interesting. I'd like you to mention that. And the second was about stretching. Like you talk about how to actually stretch. Like I've been interested in PNF stretching, for example, but it seems like the way you engage and release. I quite like that aspect, but it seems like you're looking at a different way, and you talk about the jelly phase and the change in the jelly phase of the. So I'd like you to go a little bit more in depth about the philosophy that you have behind what it means to stretch, and how a muscle, how the body gets more flexible, I suppose. Bottom line, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, in preparation for this thing, when you contacted me, you sent me a link to an interview done with Bernie. So I go, okay, let's see what this is about. See if this is a market for me to speak to, or they're going to hang me. And Bernie, on that interview, I will remind you, says there are several things that would prevent you from doing a range of motion. So we'll skip the whole, your bones are compressing. You ain't going to stretch that. Let's just go to, okay, let's say it isn't your bones. It's the back of your legs. It's not your bones. Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do I make that better? And as Bernie pointed out, there might be 3 or 4, at least 3 reasons why. One, maybe you're just a nervously tense person. And the myotonus that you're holding in your muscles is, you say, I'm saying to you, relax, and you're saying, I am. I've literally, over the years, had a few people where they literally just shake in a pose. Like their nervous tension is so high that when they try to relax, their body starts to shake. I used to laugh because this one guy was a good friend of mine, so I could laugh at him and going like, he just get in a pose he'd try to do a pose for 5 or 10 minutes, and his whole body would just be vibrating. Well, that was just nerve, proprioception, reflexes in the spine, deeply embedded, maybe from birth. And for him to learn to influence that with his mind, he's going to increase his flexibility. But it's really just, I need to develop an ability to inhibit the natural tone all of us have in our muscles. No one walks around flaccid. In fact, if you take a stethoscope and put it on a muscle, you can hear vibration. The muscles are always doing a little bit of this. It's called fasciculation. They're always doing that. So for some people, just learning to relax their mind and their body to say, oh, I'm so relaxed, I'm so calm, they would extend their range of motion a lot. And is that stretching, or is that retraining your nervous system? Well, that's, to me, it's retraining your nervous system. But as you're doing that, you're going to be affecting the fascia of the muscle. The other thing is, are you stretching the belly of the muscle? Are you stretching the end or the encompassing sheath of muscle, which is fascia? The muscle itself, if you actually talk about the fibers that are sitting like this, and then they electrochemically get closer together, and that's a contraction, then the chemical releases and they slide back. Like this sliding filament theory of muscular contraction, if you pick that up, that's just hamburger. It's just soft, it'd fall apart. Muscles have a shape and a form and a contour because they're wrapped in cling film tightly. And those filaments that hamburger is attached to that fascia, not just at the ends, but also at the sides. And so when these filaments do this, they pull the fascia of the muscle, which pulls the tendons, or just extensions of that fascia. And so there's some debate, at least when I was in school, there was some debate of like, how do muscles get bigger and stronger? Is it because each one of these sliding filaments that are my fingers get bigger, and that's why my biceps are bigger? Or am I just getting more of them? Well, every once in a while, I ask someone who might know, because they're a student or a PhD student or something. They go like, well, what's the theory now? And they go, yeah, it's still a bit of a debate. Now, maybe someone who watches your podcast is more up on it and say, oh, no, that's been decided. It's hypertrophy. These get bigger. or it is, I forget the word, when you multiply the number of fibers in your muscle.
Yeah.
So in a similar way in fascia, there are two things that you could happen with fascia that wraps the muscle tight. Are you going to lengthen it, elongate it, and really pull the fibers apart? Or is the fiber itself changing its nature? Is it going from I'm a stiff rubber band and now I'm no longer, I'm not any longer in length, but now I'm a soft piece of elastic and go further? So which one is it? And I don't know the answer. It's a rhetorical question. Again, if your podcast goes out to a lot of people, someone maybe write in and go, oh, we've got that worked out. So is the fascia just as long as it ever was, but more elastic? Or is the fascia itself actually longer? And so if you're trying to grow fascia, I think that takes months and years. I think that you can slowly progress for a long time, but you're still going to reach an endpoint. Related to what you're referring to, the meridian theory, is that all the tissues of the body, my teacher, Dr. Multiyama, said that every tissue of your body is interpenetrated with flowing water channels. Well, that was 50 years ago. And now people like Neil Teese and others are demonstrating, yeah, that's absolutely true, that you have microcirculation of fluid at every level of your body. And so this fluid, the fluid in your body, is not like liquid in a cup. The fluid in your body is like jello. Now, some of it, it's actually more accurate to say jello slightly melted. That you have some sloshing on the top is very, very close to fluid, and hard around the edges of old jello is pretty stiff. And so the stiffer you are, you're going more towards a gel phase, from like gelatin, literally from gelatin, gel, jelly, gel phase, to water, fluid. Now, it never goes to any extreme of pure water. There's no pure water in your body. There's proteins and minerals floating in it. And it never goes to hard like cement, just completely dry powder. It's always, I'm mostly gel, and then after exercise and heat and stretching, now I'm more fluid. So if these are not just muscle fibers, but this is actually fascial, or here's a layer of fascia and another layer of fascia, those layers are wrapped and stuck together by gel. And that's why you get into a hot room or you do a few stretches and all of a sudden it's like, well, now it's easy. Now it's easy. I'm warmed up. Well, the warmth isn't going to change fascia from really stiff to soft fascia fibers. It's going to have some effect. The warm up is, how is the gel fluid? Sol is for solution. Gelatin, solution, the two extremes. Gel sol. I'm stuck like this in the morning. I can hardly stretch. And then, oh, look, this is easy now. Well, that's happening at every level, really far down, fibrous level, tissue level, one muscle against another level. And so what happens is that you put a stress on that tissue, whether it's compression or tension, and that gel starts to change. So if I had a washcloth full of that gel and I started to pull on it, that gel is going to start to liquefy, and it's going to allow the fibers of the washcloth to move apart. There's still going to be a limit to how much that washcloth will move apart. In fact, this is a pretty good analogy. You get into the shower and you have an old washcloth. I hope I'm not self-revealing. I hope everyone doesn't completely rinse out their washcloth every day. But it's stiff. It's hard. It doesn't even feel like a washcloth because the soap is congealed. The micro little bit of soap that you didn't spend hours getting out has congealed. So when you pull on it or put a little more water in it, all of a sudden, it feels like a washcloth again. These are just examples of how gel sol, its elasticity, would change over 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Particularly when you're going into like the discs of your spine. If you do a spinal twist, just lay on your back and throw one leg over, hold it for 20 seconds, and then change sides. It's like, well, it's easy. But if you go into a spinal twist and you hold that, just drop that leg over for 5 minutes, when you want to come out of that pose, you have to move very slowly. Like, whoa, okay, easy. Whoa. Why? The range of motion hasn't changed. If you're flexible, your knee hit the floor in the first 10 seconds. Why 5 minutes later do you feel like if I move quickly, I'm going to hurt myself? Because the discs in your spine, if they're healthy, there's several layers of tissue, all interpenetrated by gel with a gel nucleus at the center. And there's 8 layers of ligament up and down your spine. So what happens is that as you're holding that pose, you're giving time. So the tissues are trying to slide past one another. And it's like, Well, just stay there. Relax. Because if you do too hard, it's just going to hurt and maybe tear something. Just stay there. Just put a modest stress on it and wait. If you don't have a stress on it, nothing's going to happen. But if you have a modest stress on it, the gel in these tissues is going to go from gel to salt, and this will start to happen. And now you're in spinal twist, and these are the ligaments and fascia that are on each one of your discs in your vertebra, and you're like, now he wants me to engage my muscles and come out of this? Let's take a minute. It's going to take a while. They're like, okay, let's crawl this back. Easy. Use your muscles because you need to use your muscles because you don't have any bounce in your tissues now because you literally taken the bounce out of them. And now you got and then you roll onto your back and hug your knees and you stretch your legs out and you're like, okay, let's just stay here for 30 seconds. Everyone's had this experience.
So it's always passive stretching. The yin, it's always a passive stretch, right?
I think that nothing is pure yin or yang. I think like you, that sometimes if you tense and then relax, and maybe pull a little extra hard and then relax, rather than just, well, I'll just let my knees slowly drop. Like, let's hurry this along.
The second question is why are some people's washcloths stiffer than others then? If it's just the gel to relax, then it's like some people will do the stretch and nothing will really change, and other people will do that stretch and then they'll get a lot more range of motion. I mean, why would that be? You know,
it's just like difference in vascularity of musculature and fascia. It's genetic. It's nature and nurture. There'll be some people, their calf muscle ends right here. And other people, the calf muscles, they look like a cow. The calf muscles all the way down to here. Well, all the jumpers, the calf muscles are way up here. All the sprinters and jumpers, and they have this very long Achilles tendon. And all the interior linemen and rugby players, their calf muscles go all the way down. That you don't develop that. You either have a high, tight calf muscle with a long tendon, or you don't. And I just think that's true of every muscle in your body. I mean, take a look at, it's easier to see anything in exaggeration. Pull up pictures of bodybuilders and have them all do this. And no one's bicep is the same length, the same height, the same shape.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what you and obviously Bernie has done, and they've just really shown anatomical differences and how great they actually are. I mean, and you did it with I think Bernie's done it as well with the scapula and different people's scapulas on your website, I believe. And also the acetabulum, the hip joint, and the angles of the hip joint. And people are wondering, why won't my leg go behind my head? And the other person just slips it back behind the head, like, like so.
With no training.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say, Good.
I used to hate those guys. I'm doing 6 hours a day. I wake up like I got hit by a truck every day. And then some girl, there's always a girl in those days, comes into class and goes, "You mean like this?" I hate you.
So I think one thing is just the skeletal variation and the degrees of difference there, I think, still needs to be more highlighted. I think you've done a lot to it, but especially in the Ashtanga community, whereby it's like, well, if you just show enough devotion to the method or in practice with enough commitment, or use more bandha, as you said earlier, then you'll be able to do these postures. And yeah, I mean, just look at Bernie Clark's website or Paul to know that their anatomical difference. It's so great, it's so great. And I mean, when you're looking at a hip joint and you're seeing some people's hips are that the angle of the hip is acute or grave, and it's just so, and you think, well, why isn't this more common knowledge? why are people still resist it? They still resist this fact that, you know, it's
there's a guy I just became aware of on YouTube. His name's Dan McClellan. He's one of many, but he's the one I'm used to. He's got a website. He's a biblical scholar, you know, so he like speaks and reads 5 languages, and, you know, and he's got a website. It's called Data Over Dogma. And he just brings to the popular audience what biblical scholars have been doing for 200 years, which is the Bible is full of errors and contradictions. And no 2 Bibles that are more than 400 or 500 years old are the same, because they are written and transcribed by people who either deliberately or accidentally made errors. And it's like, how can you look back? I think there's 5,600 scraps of Bible from before the printing press. There's like in the world, there's 5,600 scraps of pieces. Some are almost whole, some are just this big. None of them are identical to each other. And yet you got people who are saying it's the inerrant word of God. Every word in the Bible is perfect. And the Bible, because it's inspired by God, and it's the inerrant word of God, then there can be no errors in interpretation. So you twist yourselves in knots trying to reconcile completely irreconcilable narratives within the Bible itself. And it's like, look, that's been going on for 500 years. And I just think it's human nature that you take a myth, you take a hagiography, it's too attractive to let go, it's romantic. And in my opinion, just based on my experience, I'm not a social scientist, so I haven't done 100 case studies, but I've been at it a long time. I've seen these people. And it's like, look, there are people who come to Ashtanga and all it is learn the choreography and they can do it. I bet if you put Simone Biles into an Ashtanga class, it would take her about a week to learn how to do it, unless she's limited in external rotation. I'd have to check that and see. But my point is, there are people who are kinesthetically, skeletally gifted. It's nothing against them that they learn the poses, they string together their strength, balance, and endurance. I'm not putting them down. But if you don't have the bones for it, you're never going to get there. And that's difficult for people to accept because, look, I did it. I tried. I didn't think I could do it either, but I did it. You can do it. Look, this is all very honest because it is true. You, whoever you are, learned to do it.
Yeah.
And
it took some time and difficulty.
And it took some time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, when you say, well, look, you have the bones for it, they act like you're insulting them. Look, I'm not insulting you. I'm not diminishing the work and the effort and the.
As well.
I'm not. There are a lot of people who have bones like you who can't do Ashtanga yoga. Strength, balance, endurance, memory, attitude. There are a lot of people who have bones like you who can't do Ashtanga yoga. But for some reason, I think when you try to sell or communicate to people that your limit in range of motion is predetermined by your bones. On the one hand, the people who want to do it feel insulted. You're telling me I can't do it? I can do anything. I can manifest anything I want.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the spiritual. It's the spiritual aspect of it, isn't it? That there's something that when you say it's anatomical, when you talk like this to an audience, and and you put it down like that, and it's like, well, okay, there's functional movement, and there's anatomy, and there's genes, and it's like all that spiritual dimension is kind of for many people kind of blown apart. Right. So I suppose one thing that I was really surprised at, to trying to kind of keep this interview to, some kind of, I think we could talk to a lot, we could cover a lot, basically how philosophical you were and how spiritual in a certain sense, in inverted commas, you actually were with your writing and such, around this. I suppose what I want to say now is, or ask you is, how do the two tessellate for you? This kind of talk about bones and limitations and natural range and the more esoteric things that people can go on your website. And there's an excellent article that Bernie's written, I've read recently, on chakras and bandhas and the theory around them. I never had an understanding of you in this manner, that there was this aspect. You were very interested in this stuff that was deeper. And it wasn't just about, stretch and hold it for minutes, and this is the anatomy. I thought of you, the anatomy guy, right? This guy, he knows all about anatomy, you know, and not yoga. He's just taking yoga for anatomy, you know. And how do these tessellate in your mind, you know? And would you speak a little bit about, just so people know that, you know, what I didn't know, that you have this interest in the chakras and the bandhas, which is very, very, very interesting.
I see all of Hatha Yoga as a harmonization of the energy flow in your body. And whether it's ashram yoga, yin yoga, yang yoga, it creates a temporary window of easy chi flow in your body. And it gives you an insight into how, by being introspective and feeling it, it gives you an insight to a living life force inside of you. And that to me is the limit of asana practice. Now that's, if someone offered me that, I would take it in a minute. But spiritual life has to go, particularly the yogic, Patanjali, 8-limb view, is, well, now that you've gained an insight of how you can physically influence your well-being, the stage after that is, well, what is influencing this? Well, it's this life force that I'm influencing, if only biomechanically. No theory, just biomechanically. Look, the only proof I need is I do an Ashtanga class, and when the end of it, I feel high. And now you go to, like, well, the Western theory would be, oh, it's the blood oxygenation or whatever it is. Well, for reasons we can't get into, I find that inadequate description. It's a deep philosophical issue. But to me, it's like you become aware of how your mind can influence the life force in your body. And Patanjali is going to say that thread, prana, that you've developed from Hatha Yoga, you can learn to influence that movement of life force by controlling your breathing. Now, a forward bend is not a direct control of the prana flowing in your body. It's a mechanical thing, and you release, you've influenced the flow. Breathing is also not a direct control of the prana, but you're getting closer. That when you really start to practice and feel, yeah, I can feel the air going in and out of my lungs, but that's like the physical, mechanical aspect of it. When I actually think that I can feel something moving in my spine when I'm holding my breath, that's not air. This is very important. The air is in your lungs only. It doesn't go into your backbone. It doesn't go into your nerves or your spine. So if you have a subjective experience of a pressure change and energy flow in your spine when you're doing pranayama and bandhas, you have to understand this is not air. The breath is just a way to make you aware of, here's another way, a more subtle way to influence the flow of prana in your body. First, it was a forward bend, beat the donkey on the head with a stick to get his attention. And now, oh, wow, I can feel that. This is amazing. Then it's pranayama and mudras and bandhas. Oh, yeah, I can feel that. Then it's ultimately, what do I do with this ability to move the energy up and down my spine? What's the point? How does that make me a better person or make me happy? In Patanjali's system, it is, you can now slowly learn to directly influence that movement of prana away from your nerves and into your spine. You start with breathing, but then you get to what he called the fourth pranayama, the breathless state. And in that breathless state, he's still called pranayama because in the breathless state, you've trained and been taught to continue to influence this movement of prana, but I'm no longer concerned about whether I'm inhaling, exhaling, or breathing at all. And you go like, well, what's that about? Because eventually that will retire into my heart and my spine, and I will achieve a state called Pratyahara. That's where the Hatha Yoga Pradipika ends. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika ends at Pratyahara. He gives a big description, Pratyahara. And then he says, the author goes, Hatha Yoga, which is his term of it, is incomplete without Raja Yoga. So once you've achieved Pratyahara, now you're in the truly mystical. That to me is the doorway. How does it tessellate? The tessellation is that prana slowly changes its manifestations from physical sensations of heat and pressure to it actually feels good. Feel good is not a physical thing. Feel good, let me repeat, is not a physical thing. Feel good of the movement of prana is because prana itself is good feeling. That's part of its aspect. And you draw it into your heart, into your spine, you're now going to achieve a state called Pratyahara eventually. And then the state of Pratyahara, you're physiologically deaf and blind and unaware of your body. And now, for the first time, without the influence of I am a body, the weight of the body has been eradicated. You're not aware of your physical body. You have no weight, which is the binding sensation of I have a body. Weight leading eventually to fatigue. That sense of weight is lifted. And what's more, when you pull in the sensory energy into the heart and spine, you're now getting into the tantric theory. Patanjali still has these theories. He describes what will happen to you, what will be your conscious experience once you've achieved pratyahara. Your deafness, your dumbness, your blindness only applies to the physical dimension. If you hold that state without yearning to go back into physical embodiment, then the chakras develop into organs of perception into the astral realm. What used to be just a dim light here becomes a tunnel. And what becomes a tunnel is something you go through. And when you go through that, now you're having true mystical, spiritual experiences. And you're having conscious experiences not attached to your body. And when you do that over and over again, you eventually come to believe and to experience, not just believe. You experience, you know from experience, whatever I am, whatever my consciousness is, it doesn't die with the body because I've left it many times while living. St. Paul says, I die daily. That's just an offhand remark to how deeply absorbed you can become. And that's the tessellation. At Pratyahara, Hatha Yoga ends. But we have to have a mature understanding of what Pratyahara is. If you tell me I get in Pratyahara every day, then I'm going to sneak up behind you and fire a starting gun off behind your head. And if you jump or move, or if your pupils dilate when I shine a flashlight on them, you're not in Pratyahara. Pratyahara is related to your breath rate and your heart rate. And the only way to achieve Pratyahara is your breathing's got to come down to 2 breaths a minute or less, according to my teacher, Dr. Motoyama. But not just for a minute or two, for 30, 40, 60, 90 minutes at a time. Advanced yogis, who my teacher studied, they've been buried underground without breathing for weeks at a time. But
so he taught you this, the Japanese, I can't, what's his name again?
Motoyama.
Motoyama, sorry.
Motoyama.
Yeah. I've heard this enough times now, I should remember. But he taught you this. Have you managed to pass this on to other students of yours?
No,
right?
I can't do it.
Oh, you can't do it still. Right. This is the theory still then. Right. Okay. But you do talk about the chakra meditations, don't you? And the idea of
chakra meditations are trying to bring you from inhale, hold your breath, exhale, inhale, hold your breath, exhale. You can do Bhastrika, Kapalabhati, all these other things. Wonderful practices. I've done them all. Wonderful practices, but you can do them without thinking about how you can move energy in your spine. There's no description in the text about that. Chakra meditation, the tantrics have this, and the Hatha Yoga textbooks have this, is when you're inhaling, you need to combine that with a visualization that becomes a real, subjectively experienced sensation of moving the life force specifically in your spine and in your chakras. It might be your imagination in the beginning, but you go, okay, I breathe in, I hold my breath, I visualize this, and go on. But eventually you want that to become a lived thing. Like in the old days, for years, I would, inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Well, after years, I go the point is to feel. And what I've found is that my breathing rate to really feel my prana moving is not like what was written in the text. Well, thank God my teacher, Dr. Motoyama, already knew that. He says, yeah, you're an idiot. It's like maybe your breathing rate, my breathing rate, for all the reasons we discussed about bones and nerves being different. The breathing rate I need to do, the rhythm 1-4-2-2, look, that works for 10% of the people. For everyone else, it's a different length of inhale, a different amount of time, breath retention, a different rhythm to the exhale. And when you get established in that, you know you're doing it right, because as you change and become aware of what you're feeling in your spine, you go like, when I do it this way, I feel the chi more. That's it. That's the functional approach to pranayama and pratyahara. Oh, I should know. You need to like inhale for 4, hold for 16, exhale. And it's like, that's fine for kindergarten. But in the end, just like your poses, you need to be alive to what's happening within you. And you need to have a theory of why are you doing these pranayamas? How many should you do? For how long? And if you don't have a theory, you just like, well, I do 3 of these, 2 of those, 5 of those, and then I go out and have coffee. But when you
and
have
what about the Hatha yoga? How does that? I mean, what kind of theory? Have you said
Hatha
pranayama?
Actually, Hatha yoga has a very strong theoretical background. If you actually read the Hatha Yoga Pradipika and the Shiva Samhita and others, they have a lot of theory about what you should be doing with your breath.
So it's breath. When you're looking at teaching it, when you would look at the breath in the Hatha yoga posture, not the posture, but what's happening with the breath in the posture.
Yeah, you got to remember the Hatha Yoga Pradipika has like 16 poses, maybe it's 18.
17, I think. Yeah,
17. Okay,
we go 17.
And okay, well, 6 of those are sitting poses.
Yeah,
Shavasana. Like the number of poses is this much. It wasn't very important. And so if you actually read it, it's like they have a theory of the chakras. They have a theory of the nadis that run through the chakras. They have a theory. And to me, that's the dividing line between Tantra and Hatha Yoga now is gets a little, wobbly, because that's just what scholars do. They put names to things. This is Hatha, but this is Tantra. To me, what's important is Patanjali already picked that out. Patanjali already picked out what's important, whether it's Tantra or the Upanishads, the Brahmic traditions, what's important to all these traditions. That was his job. His goal was to we have all these different styles of yoga, Tantra. What's the commonality? And that's how he got to his 8 limbs. The commonality is do what you need to control your breath. Do what you need to control your prana. Do what you need to achieve pratyahara. His whole message in the Gita is chapter 2 ends with pratyahara. Chapter 3 is, okay, you've achieved pratyahara. Now what? Chapter 4 is, in chapter 3, you had a glimpse of samadhi. Why can't you stay in it forever? Chapter 4 is, you need to undo the karma that pulls you out of your samadhi. So when you're in samadhi, what can you do to purify your karma so you can stay in that state and don't need to go into a trance or anything? And so Patanjali's already picked out, is it Hatha, is it Tantra? I don't care. I do not care. It's what techniques. Is it a mantra? Is it a breath? Is it both? Is it an external ritual? Whatever it is, does it give you control over the energy flow in your body? And do you use that control, develop that control, not to develop a power fist to punch through a wall, but do you use that to withdraw into your spine and create the condition of pratyahara? Because yoga doesn't really start, Patanjali says this, yoga doesn't really start until you've achieved pratyahara. And that's the beginning of chapter 3. And the 5th or 6th verse of chapter 3 is, all these previous practices, the first 5 steps, are external, which is a way of saying you really ain't in the castle yet. Now you're internal, and all of chapter 3 presumes you are in the state of pratyahara. Chapter 4 is you've achieved samadhi, you've had a glimpse.
When you were teaching them, Paul, did you ever try and teach this kind of thing in your classes, or was it just anatomical? You did, right?
Yeah, but not the TT courses,
right?
Yeah, because this kind of stuff is it's not, you're not going to get a job doing this. I mean, I'm very proudly consider myself a vocational instructor. Hatha yoga, it boils down to strong physics and anatomy, and it's a wonderful profession. It's a healing profession. It's a valuable thing to do. And so I feel like my job was to teach the anatomical principles behind the practice so that you can be a better practitioner and a better teacher. And when you go up to someone, you have a skill set that says, you can't do this variation of this pose. Yeah. What can I do now? So my whole thing was, to me, the modern asana teacher, what we earlier called the secularization of yoga, is new. I'm an asana teacher, and I say that proudly. I'm not going to call myself a physical therapist because I'm not licensed and all that kind of stuff. But an asana teacher is somewhere between an exercise motivational speaker and someone who can maybe change your life by changing your relationship to your body. These are noble, admirable professions, and that's what I have done. The rest of this, what we're discussing, is my personal motivation.
Side interest.
Yeah.
So when you're teaching the asana as an asana teacher, what about the bandhas and chakras? You don't mention them. They're nothing to do with it now. No.
Not for me.
Right. So that's something different. That's another practice. That's tantric hatha yoga.
I just think that every yin yoga teacher is going to bring something different to the table. Like Sarah. Of course, it's been 10 years since I've been in a room with Sarah. But, her thing was, let's put you in a pose and talk about Buddhist philosophy.
Yeah.
Because her lived experience was, when she had a lot of physical problems that she courageously overcame. And she would go to, hours long meditations and listening, and she would be in a lot of physical pain. And so she would excuse herself, go to the back of the room. I don't think I'm making this up, and just do some yin yoga poses while listening. And that by being physically at ease and just lying there for 5 or 10 minutes, she could actually stay present to the lecture that was given. And so in her classes, and again, I could be wrong now because
I remember her saying something like that when we spoke. Yeah.
But her thing was like, okay, you're doing yoga. Why not talk about what your mental states could be, whether in this pose, or is there something about the mental state you're learning in this pose that you can take with you off the mat? Other people, they want to play the gong, it's like, let's do a yin yoga gong bath. Okay. Other people are, would talk about bandhas and mudras. In fact, the most common question I got in my TT programs, or I shouldn't say my wife and I teach like this, hand in glove. The most common question we would get is, how come you don't talk about breathing? And I go like, well, if you're interested in incorporating breathing into yin, please do it. To me, my philosophy is learn how the physical process influences the prana in your body. And so for me, I'm going to tell someone, here's an example. Let's go into a forward bend. Where do you feel this? Do you feel this in your back or are you in your legs? It's in your back? Okay. Now, every time you're in this posture and you're holding, you feel the air go out. Do you feel like it's releasing or staying the same? Do you feel like it's the same on the left side or the right side? Because if it's on left and right, it's a muscular thing. And if you feel the center of your spine, that's actually the ligaments of your spine. You actually have proprioception of things that you didn't think you had proprioception of. And when you try to go like, I'm trying to feel literally the bones of my back, you're forced to be introspective, whether you're successful or not. Now, come out of the pose. It's been 5 minutes. Easy. I go like, what are you feeling? What are you feeling? Is it pressure? Is it temperature? Is it pain? Pain is subjective. Is it traveling? Is it dispersing vertically, horizontally? Does it have a temperature or a feel to it? So I guide them into strict anatomical awareness. That's what I think a Hatha Yoga asana should be. Now, again, I have nothing against this, but someone else could say, okay, get yourself in the pose. Now, inhale, take a breath, feel that air coming in, hold that breath, and when you're ready, exhale. I have nothing against that. But you can't do that and go deeply kinesthetically proprioceptive into different parts of your body. It takes too much effort and labor. Someone could say, okay, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to say, just watch your breath while you're in the pose. Don't try to change it. It's too aggressive. Let's just watch the breath. Look, I have nothing against that. That's a great thing. But you're not being aware of what's happening in the target area of your body. So for me, poses, twist the meat machine, focus on the meat machine, feel the energy in the meat machine. And when you do pranayama, sit up and do pranayama. That's not the right way. It's not the best way. It's my way. That's what I prefer, because I grew up and am educated in knowing the anatomy of my body.
Seems like it's a real tabula rasa in terms of what, yin teachers focus on, which is kind of refreshing. Coming from yeah. And I really like that way, and that's not to say that you don't also talk about a very philosophical side of things. And, if we had more time, your chakra stuff, the idea of the chakras, super interesting. So I please recommend listeners, audience, to look at that stuff. Paul has some resources on the website about that. Do you have anything coming up, Paul, you want to talk about, or anything else? No. Nothing.
No, I was just happy to talk with you. You reached out to me, and
just kind of retired, haven't you? You said semi-retired.
I'm retired. I'm retired in the sense that my wife and I have surrendered our teaching accreditation as a school.
Yeah,
we're not registered as a school. You can't come to us and get an accreditation to be a teacher. We're old now, and we got people like Bernie Clark and others who are very well suited to teach the anatomy and TT programs. And in the years that we have left to teach, to be active, we kind of want to just explore the more esoteric and philosophical things. But we have to do that in a different way, because I can teach anatomy confidently. My own experience and thousands of people around the world, you can look up anatomy. You can double check and cross check everything I say in a class and go like, no, that's not true. So I can be very forceful and direct, just like I'm being right now when I teach. Look, it's anatomy. It's not religion. But in these areas that you're tiptoeing into, pranayama, pratyahara, chakra, karma, astral world, causal body, these are things I believe in. I've been reading for 40 years. I've not experienced them. And so the whole tenor of a group of us getting together is completely different.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah. Well, you can read some stuff on Paul's website. You can buy, I'm probably going to get an anatomy course off you. You can download courses and stuff that he's got, and probably that's a good idea for people. You seem a very knowledgeable kind of chap, and I should hope so after 40 years. Put it mildly. But really, there's a wealth of stuff, and you should listen to some other podcasts with Paul on as well, because he's done a few, and they're probably better than mine. As much as the interview has said other things that we haven't covered here that Paul speaks on, not that we haven't covered many interesting things and had quite a nice chat. Look, Paul, to round things off, I always ask a couple of silly questions. Really, like, can you give me it's just like a finisher. Like, can you give me a guilty pleasure and an inspiration? A guilty pleasure and inspiration. So two things just to introduce you as a person to people. Like, I think that's the idea, isn't it? Just
a guilty pleasure.
You don't have to be guilty about it. Anything.
Yeah,
just not chocolate. It doesn't have to be that guilty, but just not chocolate.
A guilty pleasure would be
no coffee either.
I like when Susie's not around. I watch revenge movies. Jonathan Wick, The Accountant, Taken.
That's not too bad.
Yeah,
I don't really know what a revenge movie is really.
Well, a revenge movie is formulaic. It is Sicario. Is another one. A revenge movie is someone who is an ex-military guy, which you're wondering, how did he get his killing skills? Well, it was honorable. He wasn't a jerk. And he doesn't want to kill anymore, but you kidnapped my girlfriend's daughter. Okay. So now I have to kill her.
That's a good one. But that's a first for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Susie won't watch them, and understandably so. But I get a primitive kick over, that guy deserved that.
It's a first, like it. Yeah. So it's like a Krishna Das with his what was he like watching like those biographies of serial killers? Why do they get like that? Yeah. You like that one?
Yeah.
What about inspiration? Probably is the doctor that I can't pronounce his name. The Japanese one. Motoyama. Yeah. It must be that, right? Surely, as an inspiration. He sounds like an incredible kind of guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was the great. I've had several moments that you go like, how did I qualify for that? But meeting him, I knew him for 20 years. I met with him maybe because he lived in Japan. I met with him, I'm guessing 8-10 times over that time.
A lot.
And so it isn't like I was his best student or his favorite student or something, or I didn't go to study with him. But he was a Shinto priest. Yeah. I didn't study at his temple or anything. But for me, he was the perfect combination of scientist. He had 2 PhD degrees and accomplished yogi. In my opinion, he was an enlightened being. And he didn't, even though he was raised as a Shinto priest and was active in the Shinto shrine, when he came to the United States to establish a school the last 20 years of his life, he didn't come to spread Shintoism. He didn't open a temple. He tried to found a graduate school that would focus on the scientific validation of spiritual practices and experiences. And that is the message, is that these are not contradictory goals. Is that, we tend to see spiritual experiences as internal and subjective, but they always have some form of physical reflection. I can't tell I don't know what you're experiencing in Pratyahara, but I can monitor your breathing and your heartbeat and see if you've stopped either of them. And his thing was to push that further. And that notion that science is not a muting or a denying of spirituality, or that somehow spirituality shouldn't be studied objectively, that we should just bow down and do what the old books say, has been a continual inspiration for me.
Yeah, I bet it has. Well, thanks, Paul. That was really good.
Pleasure.
I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed meeting you, and I know everyone else is going to enjoy it as well. There'll be links in the notes or whatever to Paul's website and stuff. And as we've said, he's not doing much these days, but there's still a lot of resources around that you can get with Paul on them. Old ones. All right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.